All right, hour number 2 on a Thursday. Chris Brown, Matty Glad with you, One Bills Live. Thanks for making us part of your afternoon. Joining us now, NFL writer and analyst for the 33rd team, One Marcus Mosher joins the show. He's been putting together the off-season content. The grind never stops, as Marcus well knows. And actually, you just put something up today, I believe, on the 33rd team, ranking the NFL's top 8 offensive skill set positions, basically, their cores heading into the 2024 season. Bills did make the list. They check in at number 7, and we understand why they're down a few pegs. You know, you lose somebody the caliber of a Stephon Diggs, that's bound to happen. But I guess first question out of the box here, Marcus, why still worthy of being in the top 8 as far as skill position groups go?
Because you have Josh Allen. I mean, that's really as simple as it is. As long as you have Josh Allen and he's healthy, they're going to be one of the top 7 or 8 offenses in the league. So that part, I mean, is easy. I still like the skill players on this offense quite a bit. You had James Cook last year, who was absolutely incredible down the stretch. Dalton Kincaid averaged over 50 yards a game from week 7 on. You like some of the down roster receivers quite a bit. And if they can get anything from some of the new additions at wide receiver, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, I have no reason to believe that this offense isn't going to be special again. So just to sum it up, you have Josh Allen, you're always going to be in a good spot.
When it comes to pieces that are a part of that offensive core, you also wrote something on wide receivers poised for breakouts. Is there anyone a part of the offense that you think is ready for a breakout year this season?
So glad that you asked me that, because now I get to talk about Khalil Shakir, who might be my favorite under the radar player in the NFL. And I know Bills fans know Khalil Shakir, but I'm not sure the national football fan realizes how good Khalil Shakir is and what his ceiling could be in this offense. Every time Buffalo gave him an opportunity to produce over the last 2 years, he's made big plays. We saw in the playoff game against the Steelers, the incredible catch and the play that he made after the catch. I'm not suggesting that he's going to be a number 1 receiver or he's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement for Stephon Diggs, but I do think Khalil Shakir can be a really impactful receiver on a very good offense. I'm really excited to see what he looks like in year 3.
Yeah, we just had one of the regular callers into our show astutely point out he's got more playoff touchdowns already than Diggs had in his 4 years here. And I don't know how closely you watched that Bills-Chiefs playoff game, but first half of the game, Spagnuolo's got L'Jarius Sneed on Diggs. Second half, he's got him on Shakir. To me, that said a lot, just watching that unfold through the course of that game in the AFC divisional playoff.
And that's what I'm going to be interested to see here in year 3 is how much time does he spend on the outside? Because for the better majority of his career right now in Buffalo, he's been a slot guy. And even going back to Boise State, he's been a slot guy. But you look at the size and, you know, about 200 pounds, 6 foot, ran in the 4.4s. He's not all that different in terms of size than Stephon Diggs. And again, I'm not suggesting a full-time role on the outside for Khalil Shakir, but can he give Buffalo 15, 20 snaps a game as an outside receiver? If the answer is yes, then the sky is the limit for him, because I think he can truly be one of the best route running / yak receivers in the NFL that can play in the outside, that can play in the slot. Those guys are pretty rare to find.
If you look at what the Bills did this offseason in terms of the wide receiver position, it looks like they got a little bit bigger and stronger with drafting a player like Keon Coleman. You know, you add Mac Hollins to the mix. MVS has some size as well in terms of how tall he is. But they also add a player like Curtis Samuel, who adds speed to the roster. He made your list as the NFL's fastest players at number 19. How will that speed transition into what he can do for Buffalo's offense?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Curtis Samuel back in a Joe Brady offense, because when he was with him in Carolina, that's when Samuel was playing his best football of his career. I'm not sure he's a full-time slot receiver. He certainly isn't a full-time outside receiver, but he's somebody that you just want to get the football to. And whether that's on jet sweeps, screens, bubble routes, drag routes, there's a lot you can do with Curtis Samuel. He is one of the fastest players in the league. He is so dynamic with the football in his hands. I love what Buffalo is doing with their wide receivers. Rather than trying to go out and find a number one receiver, and those ones, they're hard to find. They're rare. Find guys that fit the offense well and that can make life on Josh Allen easy. I think Khalil Shakir does that. I think Dalton Kincaid does that because he can get open so quickly. And I certainly think Curtis Samuel can do that back in a Joe Brady offense.
So I guess the Chiefs deserve credit for the blueprint on this, Marcus, because they said, yeah, that's nice, Tyreek. You want to make $30 million a year? How about no? And traded him and decided to go with, I guess to a certain extent, a little bit more of a democratic distribution of targets, at least at the receiver position. Kelsey was still going to get his 110 to 120 every year, and they made it work, relying on a superstar quarterback to raise the level and get a democratic distribution of targets to work, at least well enough with a retooled defense, which is a whole nother story. I kind of feel like the Bills are taking that same kind of democratic approach to ball distribution. Maybe it is Kincaid, the target leader at the end of the year with 110, 115, but receiver group-wise, it looks like it's going to be a lot more democratic. It's not going to be 150 to Diggs, obviously.
No, and the Chiefs aren't the first team to do this either. I mean, we remember a lot of the Tom Brady New England Patriots teams did the same thing where it was Julian Edelman that was their leading top target getter from the slot and just a bunch of guys. Whether it was maybe the Saints with Drew Brees, they had Jimmy Graham, obviously was their number one target as a tight end, but the rest of the receivers were just fine. I like this approach for the Buffalo Bills. It gives them a lot more options. They can be flexible game to game. And now they're not so reliant on one player. Their entire offense isn't based on whether Stephon Diggs or another receiver is healthy. They can build a game plan and they can build the right type of team that not only is going to have success in the regular season, but can also have success in the postseason. It's going to be a little shaky at first as Josh Allen gets used to all these new receivers and life without Stephon Diggs. But I think ultimately in the long run here, this is a viable strategy for Buffalo.
I don't just want to talk about the wide receivers. Sticking with offense, I also want to bring up our running back group because James Cook finished the season with some pretty impressive numbers, ranking within the top 5 toward the end of the season in what he averaged with rushing yards and the impact that he had in games. But the Bills also drafted a running back in Ray Davis. What do you think this running back room is going to look like as it plays out in the regular season?
They've been wanting a running back like Ray Davis for a while, and they've tried to find it, whether it was Leonard Fournette or Damian Harris, somebody that can handle the between the tackle grind of a season, and that's Ray Davis. I love this fit. I thought Ray Davis could potentially go as high as middle of the third round. For Buffalo to grab him on day 3, I think he's the perfect complement to James Cook because he is such a tough inside runner. He, according to Pro Football Focus, one of the best running backs we've ever seen at being able to make plays after contact. I think Ray Davis is going to have a big impact right away. He's not going to overtake James Cook, but now when Cook has to come off the field, you're not having a significant downgrade at the running back position. And I think Ray Davis' style is going to fit really well in Buffalo late in the season and into the playoffs when you need somebody who can grind those tough yards out. This is one of my favorite fits in the entire draft. I love Ray Davis in Buffalo with James Cook.
Yeah, and it's almost a signal to maybe how Joe Brady tweaks the offense even further, because that's really the $800 million question here in Buffalo. Like, was Joe Brady just triaging the offense last year when he took over on an interim basis because he probably really didn't have an opportunity on the fly to kind of put his quote-unquote stamp on it? How much does it change now with a full offseason? He's got the keys to the car on a permanent basis, and many of us feel it's shifting towards more of that balanced approach instead of having Josh throw it all around the yard. And maybe Ray Davis is an example of that, not only from the perspective that you just mentioned, Marcus, but it may even take some of the rushing load off of Josh and reduce the hits for him.
I think we're definitely trending in that direction, and I think it's smart by Joe Brady. They can win games with Josh doing everything. We've seen that over the last 5 years. I mean, Josh Allen has averaged 40 touchdowns a season over the last 5 years. That's absolutely incredible. But I think Joe Brady knows that they've got to lessen the workload on Josh Allen so he doesn't feel like he has to be Superman in every game. And I think this is a good way of doing that. We mentioned Ray Davis and how he can help the inside running. But even going back to the receivers, even in addition, like Curtis Samuel, if you can give him a touch in the backfield, if you can give him a jet sweep, you can give him a drag route, like easy touches just to take some of the workload off of Josh Allen, makes a lot of sense. Try to keep him healthy and fresh and not stressed as we get into January. I love this plan by Joe Brady.
Let's flip to the defensive side of the ball because the Bills have a lot of new faces walking in to One Bills Drive in terms of defensive players, whether it was through free agency or the draft. If you look at the secondary, specifically speaking about the safety position, it's completely new. No Jordan Poyer, no Micah Hyde. We're not sure on his future yet, but they re-signed Taylor Rapp, who was a part of the roster. They go get Mike Edwards in free agency, and then they draft a safety in Cole Bishop out of Utah, who got to play with Dalton Kincaid. You wrote an article about best remaining free agents, and you had a safety heading to Buffalo. Who was that, and do you believe the safety position is ready to go with the players that are a part of it right now?
Yeah, so the player that you're referring to is Justin Simmons of the Denver Broncos, or formerly of the Denver Broncos, who I think is the best remaining free agent. He's 30 years old. He's been uber productive with the Denver Broncos. I just think adding a veteran safety like this, who has his production profile, who has his experience against really good quarterbacks, including Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, makes a lot of sense. I really like Cole Bishop coming out of Utah. I'm not so sure he's ready for a every down role as a rookie. If he is, that's fantastic. But grab a player like Simmons, have him start right away. Maybe you can convince him to, play 75, 80% of the snaps to keep him healthy throughout the season. I think it makes a lot of sense for a young secondary in Buffalo that's clearly changing. They're having to revamp this unit. Justin Simmons is a baller. Bring him in and see how it works.
What do you think is his market value this late in the game? I mean, he's still considered by many to be a top safety, but a year after safeties made some sizable money, there were like 24 starting safeties in the free agent market this year. That was like 6 more than there were last year, and the market got depressed because the supply outweighed the demand. And here's Simmons sitting out here in June, which I don't think anybody really anticipated.
No, I think a lot of people thought he would be signed within a week after being released by the Broncos. I think the biggest issue here for Simmons is he just doesn't want to take a 1-year deal. He would like to get some security, sign a multi-year deal with maybe some more guaranteed money, even if that means the yearly salary is a little bit lower than he expects. So could Buffalo theoretically offer him a 2 or 3 year deal? I think that makes some sense. I do think we'll see Justin Simmons get signed sometime during the summer ahead of training camp. He's just too good of a player to be on the market for this long.
If you look at this team big picture with the offseason additions through the draft, through free agency, a new defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator, is this team poised to take a step forward this season?
It's hard to say, right? I don't know if on paper this roster is better than they were a year ago. But again, when you have Josh Allen under center, you're going to be in contention every year. He's one of the only few quarterbacks that we know can go toe-to-toe with the other top quarterbacks in the league, and maybe the only other singular top quarterback in the league. I think Buffalo is in the same spot they were last year. They are a Super Bowl contender where the roster's maybe not quite as good or as dynamic as some of the other teams in the AFC, but because they have a superstar quarterback, he's going to give them a chance in every single big game. I would be shocked if Buffalo doesn't win the AFC East this year. I would be shocked if they're not at least the 2 or 3 seed in the AFC. I think, once again, they are a legitimate, viable Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of see all the change that happened here in the offseason, and we're kind of thinking, okay, well, maybe they're a little inconsistent out of the chute, but, come mid-season, there are enough pieces in place to a lot of the content you've put together at the 33rd team to kind of elicit that, hey, you know what? You got Allen, and if some of these other pieces can fit and be good fits, yeah, they could be right back in that playoff mix again. Marcus, we thank you for the time. Appreciate you giving us some, especially as we head into what we hope is somewhat of an off season for everybody. We'll catch up with you down the line.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.